Good stuff, good stuff. Okay, I'd like to get your Bibles open. We're going to be in the book of Matthew, as Chris said, in a great children's sermon this morning. We're going to be in the Gospel of Matthew in the 16th chapter. Now, if you're using a Bible out there, I think it's on page 983. If you're with us virtually or you're using an electronic device, I encourage you to use the New International Version, the NIV, simply because that's what I have, and it's good to have the same wording. Now, context is absolutely critical to this story. So I want to set it up for you. So we're going to start a little bit earlier. We're going to go up to verse 13 in Matthew, the 16th chapter of Matthew. We're going to go up to verse 13. And I want to read what happens there to give us some context. So when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, others say Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" And Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." So let's stop right here. So here's what's happening in the story. This is the first time in the Gospel of Matthew that any disciple has claimed that he is the Messiah, the Son of the living God. It is a huge thing. Everything in the Gospel sort of turns on this declaration, this confession of Peter. And so Jesus responds and he says, "Peter, you are, this is not of flesh and blood, this is of my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter." Peter means rock. "And on this rock, your confession, I will build my church. And the gates of Hades will not overcome it." Okay? So great, powerful passage. Made even more powerful by the very first words. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi. So Caesarea Philippi is not Judea, right? It's not where the Jews were. It is foreign territory. And Jesus decides, for some reason, he does this a lot. He goes to Decapolis on the other side of the Sea of Galilee as well. He goes to a place that it's not populated by Jews. It is one that has a temple there that's at the mouth of the Jordan called Banias. And Banias was a pagan temple that for years and years participated in child sacrifice. They would take children trying to appease the pagan gods. They would take the children and slaughter them, put them into this cave, which was the mouth of the Jordan, and they would do it until the water could turn red, and they thought that the gods were appeased. So a horrible, evil place. Actually, some of us have been there together. It still feels evil. Every time I'm there, I get overwhelmed with the sense. So Jesus is in this region. He's at this sense of, and they called it the gates of hell, the Jews did. The gates of hell, right? So when Peter is making this declaration, he's in foreign land. They've got to be thinking like, who's looking for us? We're Jews here. We're going to stand out. Why are we here? But they're journeying along with him. And here in this region where the Jews would say, this is where the gates of hell are, this is when Peter makes this declaration, "You are the Messiah." And Jesus says, "On that, I'm going to build, you're the rock, and not even, which is the church, and not even the gates of hell will prevail against it." So you see what's happening? It's not like the church is the rock. It's the church is the rock. And it's thrown to the gates of hell, and it destroys the gates of hell. Right? It's not like the gates of hell are coming to the church. It's that the church goes to it. Make sense together? It's really powerful. And so that's critical to it. So then right after that story, we get our story. From that time on, after the declaration of Peter, after the gates of hell and the church destroying it or having the potential to, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord," he said, "this shall never happen to you." And Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You're a stumbling block to me. You don't have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." And then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what they have done. That's the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So we had a great men's breakfast yesterday. We had like 80 guys and here in this space. And I mentioned a book, and I asked a question that I want to talk a touch about this morning as we get into the meaning of this text. So the book is The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. Came out about a year ago. And if you have children or grandchildren under the age of like 30, I would really recommend. I think it's like required reading. It's not faith-based, but it is excellent in looking at what we might call the digital native generation and how they're impacted by social media, by screens, by all of that, and what that means for them. And he's got some specific recommendations. I really think it's really a required read. Now, in this, he asked the question that I asked our guys yesterday. Think back in your life, go back to your childhood, and think of the time where you first felt free. You got it? Like when you were a kid, when you first felt like you had freedom. Can you think about that? I don't want to take too long. Let me tell you what kind of came up yesterday. We had a lot of different experiences, a lot of different things, but we had really one that about 30 or so of the 80 guys had the same thing. It related to their bike. Bike, right? Get on a bike and be able to go. All different age kind of guys, but most of them were, mature guys that were saying this, chronologically mature, let me put it that way. Guys that were talking about getting on their bike and being able to go, and to go to unfamiliar territory, right? To go to something they hadn't seen before. They hadn't, those kinds of things. And when that happened, like for me, my first experience of freedom was, I can remember like the first time I thought I was free was I was like 6 years old, and we had free range in the neighborhood and all of that. Now what Haidt says is it's not simply social media, but that we live in a world right now, we're in a culture where our generations, the last several generations of our kids have been more protected than any other generations in history. They're guarded. They're covered. In some sense, you can say maybe even smothered. They're protected. And statistically, the studies say we live in a safer world now than we did back in my day, but we're more protective. And in that protection, what actually happens, Haidt would say, and I think is compelling, is that for all of the well intent with that, we're also not allowing children to launch. We're not giving them the opportunity to mature in ways. And so what they do, because they're not able so much to go out here, they go here. And this becomes the prison, becomes the captor for them. We together? You don't have to agree with me, but I mean, just we all understand. I mean, you can be wrong, that's okay. You don't have to agree with me. Okay, so here's the thing. And the reason he asked that question is, when did you feel most free? Is he would say that generationally, every generation has a memory of being older rather than my generation of being younger when they felt that freedom. And the consequences that kind of play with that. Okay, now, I got another book that I read when Cheryl and I were traveling somewhere called The Explorer's Gene by Alex Hutchinson. It's subtitled, Why We Seek Big Challenges, New Flavors, and the Blank Spots on the Map. And so it's really looking at, what makes us explore. And he looks at some of the big historical stuff, the European desire to go to the then known, unknown world and, and all of that. But he also looks at our lives. He says that, we just have within us there's something better for us when we explore. An example, he uses a restaurant as an example. When going to a new restaurant makes you an explorer. Trying something new on the menu of a familiar restaurant makes you an explorer. You're looking for something that you didn't know. You're going to unfamiliar territory. You're going to something that may even make you feel uncomfortable. And that when we explore, we end up having this quality of life that we lose when we exploit. When we just stick with what we have and just keep using it. So it's really an interesting read for me. I mean, I had a fun time with it. Again, not a faith-based book. But why do I bring both of those up? Because that is exactly what the Bible is. I bring these two books up because of this. Because in the Bible, freedom always comes through the uncomfortable. Always comes not while you're in it, but when you go through it. Just think about it for a moment. Joseph in Genesis, you remember the many-colored coat guy, the younger brother that was such a punk, he kept telling his brothers, I had these dreams where you're going to worship me and bow down to me and all this stuff. So what do his brothers do? They wanted to kill him, but they became humane. Just good brothers by putting him in a pit and then selling him to the slave traders and taking him to Egypt. What happens to Joseph? He goes to Egypt, he gets in prison. He has to go through this experience. He has to go through this. And what does he ultimately do? He saves his brothers and his father and all of his people. Or think about the story of Abraham. Abraham, when his name is Abram, before it's changed, he's fat and sassy in the land of Ur of the Chaldees, modern-day Iraq. He's got everything he could imagine. Not an heir, but he's got all the material stuff. And what does God say? Abraham, I'm going to make your descendants like you can't count them as the stars. I'm going to give you name. I'm going to have you recognized. You're going to be a blessing, and you're going to be a blessing to the world. Great, God. But I want you to go from here to there, to this foreign land, to this place that's going to be occupied by people that aren't going to like you, that are going to hate you. I want you to go there because that's where I'm going to give you that promise. Or think about Moses. Moses is a guy that, he kills an Egyptian. He kills an Egyptian. And he hides and runs away from Egypt. God says to Moses, I want you to go and set your people free who are enslaved in Egypt. And so Moses goes back, risks everything. Even the familiar becomes uncomfortable for him. And he goes back and he becomes, in a sense, sort of the savior for his people at that time. Or think about Rahab. Remember Rahab? She's the prostitute in the wall in Jericho. She's not Jewish, but what does she do? She hides the Hebrew spies. She risks herself. She makes herself, her place, her abode, uncomfortable and risky. Or Ruth. Remember the story of Ruth? Ruth is a Moabite. She lives in Moab. Her Hebrew husband dies. And what does she do? She goes from the uncomfortable from that comfort to the uncomfortable by going with her mother-in-law to her mother-in-law's homeland. Now, why do I bring those two women up? Because those two women are listed in the genealogy of Jesus. Because even the birth, the lineage of Jesus comes from the uncomfortable. And you know what's really uncomfortable is to be a really good Jew? I mean, a really good Hebrew? And to have all this lineage and to know your family history and to have all that stuff and to have somebody that's not you, that's not of you, that's of another ethnicity, another race, or whatever we might say, to have them in the lineage of your Savior. Oh, the uncomfortableness. But then, let's get to Jesus. You see what we do with Jesus? We have this like famous, Salden, I think is the guy that painted it, this famous painting of Jesus that I saw when I was a kid. And he's got long brown hair, beautiful blue eyes, I think, and he's very European. So that's really kind of interesting. and he just looks so peaceful. And so you just put him in your room as the painting and all, because it just felt peaceful. And we have this image of Jesus that's he's like a better looking Mr. Rogers. You know what I mean by that? He's like a Mr. Rogers hunk. That's like this really good-looking guy, but he's really just sweet and kind, and everybody's going to come to him, and everybody's got flowing robes, and everybody's going to... And so we got this vision of Jesus, and this is what we build for our lives. But what about when Jesus says, you got to love your enemies? The ones that hate you, that want to kill you right now. Or you got to pray for those who are persecuting you, who are abusing you, who are brutalizing you. Or You got to turn not just this cheek, but you got to turn the other cheek when someone does something that you know to you. Not claim justice, not clamor for what's right. Hey, look at this. You got to forgive. And that's a hard one, right? So his disciples said, well, you got to forgive 7 times, which is kind of the number of perfection. Jesus says, no, you don't have to forgive 7 times. You got to forgive 7 times 70. Or if you want to inherit eternal life, you know what he says to the one guy? Sell all your possessions, give them to the poor, and come follow me. Or you can say, well, Jim, that's just one story. Jesus says, you can't love God and money. Read the Sermon on the Mount, 5, 6, and 7 in Matthew, and man, there's this uncomfortable teaching in there. You see, what Jesus wants to do is he wants to make us uncomfortable. That's why this story is where it is. He takes his people to Caesarea Philippi, this foreign place, not only a foreign place, but a place where they've got to be looking, thinking, who's gonna get us? We don't look like them. We're not. They're gonna know we're Jews. We don't speak that language. And you can only imagine they're in this region. It's not that big. They think Banias. They think the gates of hell. He's taking us to the gates of hell, and that's where the declaration comes. You're the Messiah. You're the Son of the living God. It happened when they were in uncomfortable territory. And it's more the symbolic. It's what the entire book of the Bible is. It's what the entire gospel is. It's in that uncomfortableness that we find ourselves. And yet, isn't it great? I mean, terribly great. And yet, Peter gets it. Peter, in fact, his name is Simon. I'm going to call you Peter, Jesus says, which means the rock, where we get Petros, petroleum, all of that. You're the rock. On your confession, I'm going to build the church. Peter, you're the guy. And just 3 or 4 verses later, what does Jesus call him? Get behind me, Satan. Why? It's so powerful. Because Jesus had gone and he said, I've got to go to Jerusalem. I've got to suffer these things. I've got to be killed, and on the 3rd day I'll be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Rebuke him. Rebuke that little nice European blue-eyed guy and all. Rebuke him. Never, Lord, he says. This shall never happen to you. Jesus turned to him and said, get behind me, Satan. You're a stumbling block to me, for you don't have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. So quickly, Peter gets it, and then Peter loses it. Why? Because Peter can only handle so much uncomfortableness. Because Peter, we got through Bani, we got through Caesarea Philippi, but now we got our guy with us. He's going to be with us. He's going to do all the things that we want the Messiah to do. And Jesus is like, no. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Whoever wants to save their life must lose it. And whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world and yet forfeit their soul? Get behind me, Satan. Oh, man. Here's the thing that I think is so powerful in the story. Well, many things. One of the things is that when Jesus calls him Satan, he's making it intentional. He's doing this intentionally, obviously. And I think he's communicating something really profound to us. He's calling someone who wants to make his life easy. Jesus is calling someone who wants to make Jesus' life easy, wants him not to do what Jesus thinks that God, his Father, wants him to do. He wants to make life easy for him. He wants to give him an easy path. He's a good friend. That's what good friends do, right? But this is the danger of friendship. Now bear with me. Just stick with me. Don't judge me yet. This is the danger of friendship. Because what we so very often do is when we have a big problem in our life, everything's falling apart, we go to a friend, and what we want them to do? We want them to agree with us. We want them to say, yeah, you're right. I can't believe she did that to you. Let's go. All right, I can't believe I can't, we went, and we build our friends like that. And sometimes that can become the most dangerous emotional and spiritual thing in our lives. That's what Satan does. Satan does it earlier in the form of a serpent in the story of Adam and Eve. You know, he doesn't come like the devil with the pitchfork and the, you know, the red and, you know, the horns and all of that. And they're not afraid of him as a serpent. Have no reason to be afraid of him. He comes to him and he says, you know, hey, don't you, I mean, this is Jim's version. Like, you love being with God. He walks with you in the afternoon. You love him. He does so much for you. Yeah. But why don't you eat of that tree? Well, he tells us we can have anything but not that one, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or we'll die. And the serpent says, well, you know, don't you want to be like God? You love him. You want don't you? I mean, he cares for you. He takes care of you. Wouldn't you want to be more like him? All you need to do is eat that. You see what the serpent does? He comes in the form of a friend. Let me help you. Let me make it better for you. Let me do that. It's like like a young woman that really struggled with how much money she was spending on her clothes and how much debt she had and all like that. And she goes to her friends and she says, you know, you got to help me with this. I mean, it's just getting, you know, and so they start limiting how often she can have her credit card. I mean, they're really kind of taking control and helping her in this. But yeah, one day she goes and she sees this gorgeous dress. And she goes in and she tries it on and she comes out with it, wearing this dress to hang out with her girlfriends. And I say, what in the world did you do? And she said, well, I got the dress. And they said, well, didn't we tell you every time you were tempted like that, you were supposed to say, get behind me, Satan? She said, yeah. So, well, did you do that? She said, yeah. I said, get behind me, Satan. And what happened? He said it looked great from the back as well. So these friends, right? As much as we try, we want the friends that are going to agree with us, the ones that are going to kind of keep it easy for us. And we've got to beware of the easy path. That's why Jesus says you got to take up your cross and follow him. That's why Jesus says that why forfeit your soul, right? Just to have something in this life. And that's the teaching for us today. But the thing that we have to recognize is this way to freedom, this through the wilderness, through the uncomfortable, though it is always good for us, is not natural to us. And we're inclined not to want to do it. We're inclined to just like, no, I'm good. I got enough Jesus. I got enough faith. I got enough. I'm good. And we kind of leave it at that. And that's the danger. That's the danger. So, our grandkids are with us. And so our 6-year-old and our 4-year-old. And in the mornings, they get out of bed. And their parents are really, really good about digital stuff for them. So they don't watch screens much at all. But when they're with us, with me, they can sneak in the bedroom with me and watch cartoons. That nobody knows until now, okay? And then Cheryl is culprit as well, because their grandmama, she will fix breakfast for them. So the other day, actually, their dad did, fixed this big thing of scrambled eggs. And so we're up on the bed, and they come in with, everybody's got their plate of scrambled eggs. And one of us, I really don't even know who, kind of spilt it, and one of the plates just goes like onto the duvet, right? I think it's a duvet, I don't know what it is, like a bedspread. And I'm like, I gotta get it. You know, so like, that's, you know, I'm doing that. Well, as soon as I did that, our 6-year-old, like, oh, Lord, he thought he was in trouble. He thought I was mad, and he just runs and starts crying, and he runs to his mom at this safe place. Runs to his dad, actually, because runs to his parents, a safe place. And they were great. Like, you know, hey, your granddaddy wasn't getting on you. He was just trying to not ruin his bedspread, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And it was a good teaching moment for them and all that was there. So after all that was over, I'm reading to him at night before bedtime, and I stopped and I said, you know, I just want to go back to what happened this morning. He said, okay. I said, you know, when you kind of lost it there because of the eggs, and I said, I want you to know I wasn't getting on you, and I apologize if you thought I was. But he's 6, and I said, but you know, here's the deal. I was telling the men this yesterday. You can grow up, and you will grow up, and you can be the kind of man when you grow up that when something bad happens, he immediately wants to run away from it. Or you can grow up and be the kind of man that sees something that's happened and runs toward it and says, how can I make it better? And he's like, can we watch a cartoon now since we've read? And I've come back to that conversation with him 5 times since then. I know he's 6. I know he behaved the way he was supposed to behave. I get all of that. That's not my point. But my point is this. 2 really good friends. Both of them, about the same time I knew, 3-4 weeks ago, had a potential medical diagnosis that would be life-altering and most likely life-ending. And they loved me enough to allow me to be part of the journey with them. And for both of these folks, it turned out to be an incomplete, not what originally was thought, and they've gotten a beautiful bill of health after that. I was talking to one of them yesterday, actually both of them. And the first one, I was talking to her, and I said, hey, I bet during this last month, you've really thought a lot. And she said, oh, Lord, you have no idea. And I said, well, did you think about being nicer to me? And she said, I actually did. Because when I got to thinking it all and planning it out, I realized you probably were going to be the one that was going to bury me. So I wanted to give you some good things to say about me. When the diagnosis comes, or when the phone vibrates, or when you have a choice, you can do everything in your power to try to run away, stay away, deny, avoid. Or you can trust in the promises of God and run toward it. I tell you these stories, listen carefully please, I tell you these stories not because these 2 wonderful people have been in a sense healed, but I tell you this story because there will be a time in your life and in mine when the healing will be of another nature. To be healed not in, but of or from. What will we do? Will we run from it? Or will we run toward into the embrace of a loving God forever? I started by asking you the question, what's your first memory of being free? Maybe I should ask you, what's the last memory you have of being completely free? No bondage, no worry, no doubt. The way we get there is by picking up a cross and journeying together. Amen.